West says, Burkina is collapsing. The IMF says, remarkably resilient. The World Bank says, growth continues. And the numbers do not lie, say 7.2%. In the middle of a war, in the middle of sanctions, in the middle of isolation, in the middle of terrorism, while 10% of the population is displaced, after leaving ECOWAS, after Western aid was cut, after the US canceled a $500 million deal, 7.2% growth projection, 2026. How? The answer to that question is the subject of this video. And this answer is not just a lesson for Burkina, it is a lesson for all of Africa. 1 second. If this is your first time watching this channel, stop. This channel tells the economic truths about Africa that Western media does not show. CNN shows you humanitarian crisis in Burkina, but does not show 7.2% growth. BBC tells you post-coup chaos, but does not mention that inflation has fallen to near deflation levels. The Atlantic Council writes an article calling it the Sahel's greatest crisis, but skips the fact that the poverty rate dropped 3 points. Subscribe, like, and watch this video to the very end, because I will show you a table from 2022 to 2026, how every economic indicator has changed with numbers. Let me tell the story with numbers, because numbers are not propaganda. 2022, the coup year. I came to power in September. That year, Burkina Faso's growth was 1.8%, low, because of political instability, because there were 2 coups in the same year, first Amoeba in January, then me in September. Investor confidence was shaken, Western partners were distant, the security situation was deteriorating. 2023, the recovery year, growth 3.6%. We expelled France. ECOWAS imposed sanctions on us. We founded the AES with Mali and Niger. Despite everything, the economy began to recover. Why? Because reforms started. State control over the mining sector increased. Agricultural mechanization campaigns were launched. Gold production rose. 2024, the momentum year. Growth 4.9%, nearly 5%. The World Bank confirmed it in its July 2025 report. Real per capita GDP growth increased from 0.7 to 2.5%. So it was not just the economy that grew. Income per person also increased. People individually began earning more. What drove this growth? The services sector and agriculture. The improvement in the security situation thanks to Operation Ice Wall. Towns recaptured, displaced populations returning to their land, agricultural production increasing, and gold. Gold prices hit records, and Burkina with 94 tons of gold production benefited to the maximum. 2025, the breakthrough year. Growth estimate between 5 and 6.3%. The World Bank had projected 4.7%, but the actual figure came in higher. The mining sector, especially gold, created a locomotive effect, and on December 31st, 2025, we declared food self-sufficiency. This was not just a slogan, it was the concrete result of increased agricultural production. 2026, the target, 7.2%. 7.2%. Let me put this number in perspective. France's 2025 growth, 0.7%. Germany, in recession. The UK, 1.1%. Italy, 0.7%. Japan, 1.2%. The G7 average is around 1%. Burkina Faso, in the middle of a war, is growing 7 times faster than the G7. Let me say that number again, 7 times faster than the G7. The world's 7 richest countries, at peace, with advanced infrastructure, with trillion-dollar budgets, are growing at 1%. Burkina, at war, with limited infrastructure, with a $23 billion economy, is growing at 7.2%. And in Africa, Nigeria, the continent's largest economy, 220 million people, oil-rich, growth at 3.3%. South Africa, the continent's most industrialized country, growth at 1.5%, still struggling with load shedding. Ghana, our neighbor, democracy champion, growth at 3.8%. Kenya, East Africa's locomotive, growth at 5.2%. Burkina is growing faster than all of them. In the middle of a war, under sanctions, with Western aid cut off. Let us even compare with China. China's 2025 growth was around 4.5%. The world's second largest economy, an $18 trillion giant, is growing slower than Burkina. India, the world's fastest growing major economy, 6.5%. Burkina is growing faster than even India. This defies what is written in economics textbooks. The textbooks say, war equals collapse, isolation equals crisis, sanctions equal recession. Burkina is disproving all of them. Now let us go deeper. What is behind the growth? First engine, gold. Burkina Faso produced 94 tons of gold in 2024. Its value at a time when world gold prices are hitting records is immense. And we are not just producing gold, we are increasing state control over gold. Sopamid, a state mining company, manages 11 mining sites. 5 gold mines have been nationalized. The state's share in the Kiaka mine was raised to 40%. The terms were renegotiated with Australia's West African resources. And most importantly, the first gold refinery is under construction. Instead of exporting gold raw, we will process it in Ouagadougou. The added value will stay here. During the France era, gold was extracted and sent to France. Burkina received only crumbs. Now gold is extracted, processed in Burkina, and enters Burkina's treasury. Second engine, agriculture. On December 31st, 2025, we declared food self-sufficiency. How? Improved seed distribution, mechanization campaigns, targeted subsidies, and most importantly, security. Thanks to Operation Ice Wall, territories recaptured in the northern regions allowed farmers to return to their fields. Some of the more than 2 million displaced people returned to secure areas, and agricultural production restarted. And the Relance Plan, the 2026-2030 National Development Framework, puts agriculture at its center. Expanded irrigation, water storage systems, livestock feed production, aquaculture, agro-processing, not just producing, processing, not just exporting, creating added value. Third engine, fiscal discipline. This is the engine nobody talks about, but the most important one. Budget deficit, 10.4% in 2022, 5.6% in 2024, cut nearly in half. Current account deficit, 8.0% in 2023, 6.4% in 2024. And we achieved the first current account surplus in 60 years. Tax revenue increased from 17% of GDP in 2022 to 17.8% in 2023. We collected more tax, but did not raise tax rates. We expanded the tax base by narrowing the informal economy, by directing mining revenues into the state treasury, and inflation. It was 4.2% in 2024 due to food price increases. In 2025, it fell to mere deflation levels. Food self-sufficiency directly reduced pressure on prices. The IMF Deputy Managing Director came to Ouagadougou personally and said commendable, said remarkably resilient. This comes from the IMF, the institution that normally says implement structural reforms, privatize, tighten belts, is telling Burkina resilient. Fourth engine, the headquarters decree, February 12, 2026, adopted by the Council of Ministers. Companies with annual revenues exceeding 5 billion CFA francs, $8.8 million, must build their headquarters in Burkina. 4 categories. First, 5 to 25 billion CFA, basic office building required. Second, 25 to 50 billion, larger building required. Third, 50 to 100 billion, significant investment required. Fourth, over 100 billion CFA. Minimum 7-story building with underground and surface parking and energy efficiency standards. What does this mean? Capital will stay in Burkina. Profits will stay in Burkina. Jobs will stay in Burkina. Tax will be paid to Burkina. Until now, multinational companies would earn in Burkina and take their profits to Abidjan, Paris, London. Headquarters were abroad. Profit flowed out. Only low-wage jobs remained in Burkina. This decree says, either build here or leave. Keeping capital here is the guarantee of sustainable growth. Fifth engine, the health revolution. And this is a number nobody expected. Malaria cases, 10,805,000 in 2024. In 2025, 7,329,000, a decrease of 32%. Malaria deaths, 3,523 in 2024. In 2025, 1,900, a decrease of 48%, nearly cut in half. Among children under 5, a reduction of more than 1.9 million cases. How? 15 million latest generation insecticide-treated bed nets distributed, free. 4.9 million children under 5 received seasonal malaria chemoprevention. Intermittent preventive treatment for pregnant women. Early diagnosis and case management were strengthened. Health Minister Dr. Kargugu. These unprecedented results reflect the impact of national leadership and strengthened governance in the fight against malaria. Target: eliminate malaria by 2030. This is 3.5 million fewer malaria cases in 1 year in a country at war. Why does Western media not show this? Because it doesn't fit the Burkina is collapsing narrative. Now let us see the full picture together. 2022 to 2026, growth 1.8% to 7.2% projected, quadrupled. Budget deficit 10.4% to 5.6%, cut in half. Current account deficit to surplus, the first surplus in 60 years. Inflation, volatile to near deflation. Poverty, 26.2% to 23.2%, down 3 points. Malaria cases, 10.8 million to 7.3 million, down 32%. Malaria deaths, 3,523 to 1,900, down 48%. Gold, nationalization, plus refinery under construction, plus increased state ownership. Food, import dependent to self-sufficient. Companies, taking profits abroad to mandatory headquarters requirement. Agriculture, Relance 2026 to 2030 plan launched. This was done in 3.5 years, in the middle of a war, under sanctions, with Western aid cut off. But is 7.2% realistic, you will say? A fair question. Always question numbers. The World Bank's July 2025 estimate for 2025 was 4.7%. The actual figure came in between 5 and 6.3%. So even the World Bank fell short of its own estimates. Where does 7.2% come from? First, gold. In 2026, gold prices continue to remain high, and new mining sites operated by Surpassing across 11 locations are approaching full capacity. Second, agriculture. Expanded irrigation and water storage under the Relance Plan will show their impact in the 2026 harvest season. Third, construction. The headquarters decree requiring large companies to build in Burkina will revitalize the construction sector. 7-story buildings mean cement, steel, and labor, all contributing to GDP. Fourth, security. The continued success of Operation Ice Wall, the resumption of economic activity in recaptured territories, the return of displaced populations, all of this increases economic activity. Are there risks? Yes. The security situation remains fragile. Terrorist attacks continue. 10% of the population is still displaced. Climate shocks, drought, or floods could hit agricultural production. Debt refinancing and dependence on regional markets carry risk. And the mining sector is dependent on gold prices. If prices fall, growth falls too. We know this, and that is why we are pursuing a diversification strategy. We are investing not just in gold, but in agriculture, industry, and energy. So what does this mean for Africa? Burkina Faso, 25 million people, $23 billion GDP, a small economy. But the story is big, because Burkina is proving a model, without depending on Western aid, without surrendering to IMF conditions, without bowing to ECOWAS rules. With your own resources, with your own strategy, you can grow. For 25 years, Africa was told, implement our reforms, privatize, liberalize, open the door to Western investors, follow the IMF program, or you will sink. Burkina did none of these things. It nationalized. It increased state control. It imposed the headquarters requirement on companies. It did not leave the IMF program, but interpreted the IMF's rules in its own favor. And the result? 7.2% growth, 7 times the G7. This is a result that challenges the most fundamental assumptions of development economics. The assumption that free markets equal growth. The assumption that Western investment equals development. The assumption that IMF conditions equal stability. Perhaps there is no single formula for development. Perhaps every country should have its own model, suited to its own conditions, its own resources, its own will. And this is exactly what Thomas Sankara said. Sankara, from 1983 to 1987, transformed Burkina in 4 years. He targeted food self-sufficiency. He reduced dependence on imports. He rejected foreign aid. He said, "We do not want aid, we want justice." And he was assassinated, 1987, at 37 years old. Today, 38 years later, the same vision, on the same soil, is coming to life. Food self-sufficiency declared, gold nationalized, France expelled, and the economy, despite war, is growing. Sankara's unfinished revolution is being completed. And one more detail that nobody noticed, but is very important. On February 20th, 2026, just days ago, a handover ceremony was held at the General Abubakar Sangoule Lamizana camp in Ouagadougou. Russia donated $345,000 worth of military engineering equipment to Burkina Faso's armed forces. What was in this equipment? 10 generators of varying power outputs, 15 100-kilowatt transformers, and water filtration equipment. Generators and transformers to strengthen the capacity of military engineering units in crisis zones, to rapidly establish electrical infrastructure in recaptured towns, water filters for clean water access. This is not a large sum. $345,000 is less than 1,000th of the $500 million deal the US canceled. But the difference is Russia delivered. The US promised and took it back. And this equipment directly contributes to growth. Without electricity in recaptured territories, economic activity does not start. Without clean water, people do not return. These generators and transformers are the technical infrastructure for towns coming back to life. Final word. The Atlantic Council on February 23, 2026, published an article, titled, "The Sahel's Most Acute Crisis is Unfolding in Burkina Faso." The author, Jordana Yokai, a former Sahel analyst for the US Department of Defense. The article says, YouTube channels and Anglophone influencers are spreading unrealistic success stories. Fine. Here are the successes. 7.2% growth. Source, Africa Times, February 25, 2026. 4.9% growth in 2024. Source, World Bank, July 2025. Budget deficit cut in half. Source, World Bank. Malaria cases down 32%. Source, Ministry of Health, February 19th, 2026, Cabinet meeting. Malaria deaths down 48%. Food self-sufficiency. Source, December 31st, 2025, National Address. 94 tons of gold. Source, mining statistics. Current account surplus, the first in 60 years. Source, IMF. These are not my words. These are the data of international institutions themselves. The World Bank, the IMF, the WHO. Unrealistic? Ask your own institutions. Write in the comments, can your country grow at 7.2% in the middle of a war? And why can it not? Send this video to friends in every corner of Africa. In Nigeria, where there is oil but no refining. In Congo, where there is cobalt but no processing. In South Africa, where there is coal but no electricity. The problem is not resources. The problem is will. The West told us, you cannot do it. We said, watch. 7.2% in the middle of a war, under sanctions, with Western aid cut off. We are growing. Because we do not bow. Homeland or death, we shall prevail.